understands what it feels like to be a young adult diagnosed with cancer.
I don't know how to prepare mentally or physically for a bone marrow transplant.
I'm struggling to keep things together. How do I support my husband?
No one is prepared to receive a blood cancer diagnosis. It can be a scary and overwhelming time. Having someone to talk to, someone who really understands what you're going through, is invaluable. The Leukemia and Lymphoma Society's First Connection program matches patients and caregivers with a trained volunteer, someone who shares their diagnosis, someone who's walked in their shoes. I recommend this program to all of my patients.
Talking to a First Connection volunteer gave me some really good practical ideas about managing the new family life. He knew what it was like to have a child with cancer.
I didn't realize how much I was keeping inside until I talked to a First Connection volunteer. Now, I no longer feel alone.
I actually spoke with 2 First Connection volunteers who gave me ideas about how they handled their side effects. It helped me better navigate my recovery.
Talking to another caregiver validated my feelings. It felt like a weight was lifted.
I'm one of more than 800 LOS First Connection volunteers. I understand the fears and concerns a newly diagnosed patient has, as well as questions an experienced patient has when a new treatment is suggested. If you want to speak to a First Connection volunteer now, sign up through the LOS website at los.org/First Connection.
Good morning. My name is Keisha Johnson, and I am the manager of the Patient and Community Outreach for Georgia and South Carolina of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. It is my honor to extend the warmest welcome to each of you on behalf of LLS's 2023 Southern Blood Cancer Conference. It is great to be back in person. As many of you know, a diagnosis of a blood cancer brings many daily challenges. LLS is committed to providing support and guidance to patients and the health professionals who care for them. By joining together with local organizations, leading healthcare professionals, and our generous sponsors, LLS can provide opportunities such as the Southern Blood Cancer Conference that improves the quality of life for blood cancer patients and their families. I would also like to recognize our sponsors and supporters who have helped LLS make this conference a reality. Thank you to our premier international partner, Walgreens. Thank you to our national sponsors, AbbVie, Adaptive Biotechnologies, Amgen, AstraZeneca, Beijing, Bristol Myers, Eli Lilly and Company, Genentech, GSK, Insight Corporation, Janssen Oncology, Jazz Pharmaceuticals, Karyopharm Therapeutics, Kite, a Gilead company, Merck & Co., Novartis Pharmaceuticals, Pfizer, Pharmacyclists, Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, Rigel Pharmaceuticals, City of Hope, Morphosis, Northside Hospital Cancer Institute, and Takeda Oncology. LLS would like to extend a special thank you to Susan Snaps for kindly donating these delicious ginger snap cookies. Susan is a Hodgkin's lymphoma survivor. Her mother wanted to help Susan as she was going through chemo and learned ginger is a stomach soother, and of course, homemade cookies always bring smiles. Her mom carefully crafted a recipe for ginger snaps, eventually naming them Susan Snaps. On treatment days, Susan brought the cookies to share with her fellow cancer buddies and saw the smiles and joy this little gesture and cookie gift brought. Neighbors, family, and friends started hearing about their unique ginger snaps, and a beautiful business was born. A big thank you to our wonderful Blood Cancer Conference Planning Committee for helping organize and securing the excellent speakers for today. And lastly, I would like to also thank today's speakers. These talented and busy professionals have volunteered their time to present today, and we are truly grateful. For a complete list of our supporters, please refer to your conference booklet, which also includes information on today's agenda, sessions, and space for note-taking. At LLS, we work to transform the landscape of cancer for blood cancer patients so that they can not only survive but thrive. Our critical mission is to save lives and to improve the quality of life for blood cancer patients, survivors, and their families. To support you through every part of your cancer experience, from diagnosis through treatment and beyond. To make sure you have access to cutting-edge therapies and the information, guidance, and reassurance and financial assistance you need when dealing with blood cancer. We accomplish this by funding research to advance life-saving treatments, providing education, support, and resources to patients, caregivers, and healthcare professionals, and advocating for policies that break down barriers to care. We are the largest nonprofit funder of blood cancer research, having invested more than $1.6 billion in cancer research since our founding in 1949. In the last 5 years alone, we have helped advance 75% of the almost 100 blood cancer treatment options approved by the Food and Drug Administration. At LLS, we strive for a world where quality cancer care is available and affordable to all. So we also work to influence policy at the national and local level. After years of relentless efforts by LLS staff and blood cancer advocates, President Biden just signed into law the Inflation Reduction Act and its key health provisions, which will make healthcare more affordable for millions. Today, many patients spend $10,000 or more out of pocket per year for a single drug, and they often owe thousands at the start of their planned year. This expansive legislation covers many areas, but one of the biggest wins is the new $2,000 annual cap on Medicare patients' out-of-pocket prescription drug costs starting in 2025. The new policy also allows patients to spread costs over the year. We are absolutely thrilled with this outcome. LLS's free blood cancer support resources are there for you. Through our Information Resource Center, you can get one-on-one assistance from highly trained social workers or oncology nurses. And in our Clinical Trial Support Center, registered nurses help you find and enroll in clinical trials. LLS offers a wide array of free help, personalized information, and financial assistance. To learn more, I encourage you to visit lls.org or drop by the exhibitor booth to chat with one of our amazing staff and volunteers. To access this service, patients can simply call the Information Resource Center again at 1-800-955-4572 and let the information specialist know that they are seeking help to find a clinical trial. LLS also offers patient and caregivers one-on-one nutrition consultations with our registered dietitian. By speaking with a registered dietitian, you can learn strategies to improve nutrition and side effects, tips for meal planning and grocery shopping, and answers to your nutrition questions. You can access our nutrition services via the Information Resource Center or by going directly online to our website. If you are looking for more support, we also offer several ways to connect to other patients and caregivers. The Patty Robinson Kaufman First Connection program matches patients and their loved ones with a trained peer volunteer who has had similar experiences. Peers are trained in basic counseling skills and are armed with local resource materials to address a variety of needs. Many patients have said that this connection gave them hope and new understanding. Another way to connect is through our groups. LLS hosts both online and in-person support groups. All groups are led by licensed healthcare professionals. Finally, our LLS community has over 23,000 patients and caregivers. This online social network provides support and education. Participants can connect with each other and find out about the latest treatments, clinical trial outcomes, survivorship, and quality of life issues. You can find out about all these resources and more by visiting the LLS table in the exhibit space or by going online to lls.org. At LLS, we are committed to improving the lives of blood cancer patients and their families for today and tomorrow. I hope you will enjoy this conference and walk away having learned a great deal from our medical experts and have a better understanding of what LLS does and how we can support you. And with that, it is now time and my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Youri Larson. Julie is a licensed clinical social worker who has spent her career working in oncology supportive care. She has a vibrant private practice working primarily with individuals under the age of 40 years facing an unexpected medical diagnosis. Julie is a frequent speaker and educator to both survivor and professional audiences on the impact of a serious illness at a young age, living fully after a cancer diagnosis, and resilience. Julie's clinical work integrates cognitive behavioral, mindfulness, and narrative therapies. Working alongside her clients and audiences, she helps people identify inherent strengths and cultivate additional resilient behaviors to build confidence in the ability to navigate hardship. Julie's clinical work has led her to be a trusted advisor to many advocate organizations. She has been featured in various publications, including Coping Magazine, Cure, Self Magazine, Crazy Sexy Cancer, and many wellness and survivor blogs. Please help me give Julie a warm welcome.
Good morning. Hello. It's nice to see so many people out there. I hope you've got your coffee and you've had some breakfast. I know that you are all here today ready to learn more about your diagnosis and to gather important information to answer questions that might be keeping you up at night or that are just nagging at you about your specific diagnosis from the many medical experts that are on deck for throughout the rest of the day. And that information is very, very important. It's critical, right, to knowing how to cope with a cancer diagnosis. But I'm standing up here because my work as a therapist, medical and oncology therapist, is because I believe, and I think many of the medical experts in the room would agree with me, that your mental and emotional and relational and spiritual self is also incredibly important, right? And it is, when we talk about treating the whole patient, those things are a part of this package. So as we begin this day, I want to just lay the groundwork that what you might hear or the conversations you might have with peers could trigger things within you, right? They could make you feel uneasy, it could spark a question, it could take you back to first diagnosis, it could start a little rumble of worry or uncertainty. It may also make you feel relief and that you're not alone, and comfort and reassurance. I think that it matters a great deal that you pay close attention to that. And in meeting somebody like me, a medical professional, sometimes a medical oncologist, therapist, you don't often know what to do, what happens behind those closed doors. So guess what? We're gonna have kind of like individual therapy en masse. Doesn't that sound fun? No, you're like, I did not have enough coffee for that. Was not prepared for that. No, but really what I would love for you to do is to grab a piece of paper and a pen. And as I talk today, if there are things that make you think about yourself, I want you to sit back and let my words guide you as you think about yourself, because we all do this differently. You have cancer. Many of you have sat in an office with a doctor and heard those words. And those words, you have cancer, send into kind of a spiral information overload. Suddenly you find yourself getting like an oncology degree, right? Learning and understanding your diagnosis and medical terms and medical options. Uncertainty about work, or if you're in school, how do I do this? How do I continue to do this? Should I do this? What are my rights? What are my entitlements? Emotional conversations with friends and family that feel heavy and feel like a lot to do. How do I do this? What do I say? How do I meet the questions that people ask me that I'm not quite sure how to answer? Fear about the future. How do I look out and plan? Is that even okay to do? It feels a bit reckless to think so far into the future. Questions about the long-term impact of the treatments that you've had. All of these things are normal to feel. And they can trigger stress. So let's just have a quick stress 101. The word stress gets a bad rap in our culture. We think of it as all bad. But stress really is just your body's way of responding to a demand, right? And our body has a physical, an emotional, and a mental response to stress. So I'm just going to begin by beginning to tease those things apart. There's a mental response, how you think, what the narrative in your mind is. There's an emotional, what we feel emotionally. I feel confusion, I feel unsettled, I feel worry, I feel self-doubt, I feel concern, fear. And then there's a physical response, right? Your stomach feels in knots, maybe your shoulders go up. So our body has all three responses. And there are different types of stress. And you know, not all stress is bad. If ever you've interviewed for a job, are gone on a first date, or completed like an endurance event, like a marathon or a sprint or something like this or anything, you felt stress. And that stress is working for you, right? It makes us sit up on the front of our seat. It makes us pay close attention. It makes us kind of get ready for a challenge. So in some ways, the way we think about our stress as our body's natural response to meeting a challenge, as opposed to our body spiraling into fight or freeze because of a demand or distress, is already a different way to think about stress. Stress is also subjective. So what's totally stressing you out may not affect me at all. And sometimes when I sit with a couple or a family in my office, that's sometimes part of the tension, is that there's a misunderstanding of, I don't know why this is bugging you so much. Well, it is really bugging me because we feel stress in different ways. Step one, managing the mind. So why is this important that I am standing up here today, and we're going to begin this day by thinking about the way in which you respond or manage it? Because when you feel calmer, you act smarter. And you're able to pay better attention. You're able to access your thinking so that you can ask the questions that you need to ask that light the road ahead. So we need to get really clued in and aware of how that stress shows up so that we can find ways to soothe and get our feet on the ground and get calm so that we can act. Does that make sense? Starter toolkit. So I'm going to give you some homework. Great, that's the second thing I've said that you're like, geez, we're going to do therapy, now I'm going to give you homework. You're like, I'm out. No. But the homework that I'm going to give you is, I start many of my sessions with my clients this way when I begin that work, is between now and the next time I see you, or after you leave my office today, I want you to just begin to cultivate a habit of noticing. What does that mean? That means that, like, through the day, how am I doing? Okay, well, I'm okay. I'm a little tired. I think I'm a little overwhelmed by this information. I'm feeling a little irritable. I'm feeling a little bit on edge. Just begin to notice how you're doing. We go through our lives so doggone fast, and we get tunnel vision about what the tasks that are on our to-do list, that we're not completely paying attention to how we are in the midst of that. In that noticing, connect with your body. How's my body? Well, I do. I feel like a spin in my stomach. That's my agitation. That's an unsettledness that's there. I'm aware of like all this thinking and worry and heaviness in the background as I'm trying to stay present with this conversation right here. Connect with others. So when we begin to think about an emotional toolkit starter box, toolbox starter kit, how are you connecting with others? Who are the others that you connect with? Later in this talk, I'm going to talk about kind of categorizing your people. More on that later. But just beginning as you sit with me right now, who are my people? Who do I reach to? Who's in my camp? Who's in my inner circle? Pay attention in this noticing to what's working and not working for you. When I'm feeling upset, what works for me is to take a deep breath, slow down, and figure out my very next step. What's working for me is sometimes to get outside and take the dog for a walk. What's working for me is to take that worry and write it down. That way I know it lives someplace that's ready for a doctor's appointment. What's working for me is sometimes it always just helps to pick up the phone and call my sister, because she's funny and she calms me and she helps me turn my attention to something else. What's not working for me is scrolling through my social media feed for 30 minutes. What's not working for me is getting numbed out in front of the TV and going to bed way too late so I'm groggy and super tired the next day. What's not working for me is constantly taking mindless trips to the Dorito bag. No? What's not working for me is arguing with this one person who does not get it. Okay? So can you begin to start to pay attention? This is what works. This is what's not working. And then also in this homework of noticing, how does your stress show up? Everybody is different. You remember I just said we're going to separate stress into thinking, feeling, and our body. In my practice over the course of many years that I've sat with people, I would say that the way people notice their stress is different. I have certain individuals that I work with who are very thinky. They have very busy brains. And in my office, I can see their worry and their stress in the spin of their mind. I think this, well, and I think this, and I know this, and I wonder this, and I think that, blah, 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 blah. And when I say to them, as a therapist does, well, tell me, how does that make you feel? Right, because that's like what my job is. Right, how does that make you feel? They're like, well, I think, and I think, and I think. So they're, hey, right up here. If that sounds like you, then that work, sometimes with those individuals, is to begin to help them connect. This thinking is making me feel overwhelmed. It's making me feel sad. It's making me feel lonely. It's making me feel insecurity or self-doubt, right? So I want to connect that, and I have a big feeling wheel in my office, and sometimes I give it to my clients and say, take a look, see if anything there matches how you feel emotionally. We want to broaden that feeling word vocabulary, right? Now, I have other clients in my office who walk right in, and there's just, whoo, tears are right there, and they are lost, and they are confused, and they are overwhelmed, and they are just feeling just like they don't know what to do next. And I say to those clients, I can see that. Tell me, what is it that you're thinking about that's making you feel that way? And they say, oh, I just feel so overwhelmed. So the feeling is really big. It's very noticeable to those clients. And my work with them is to do the opposite. Hey, can we tune in to the story in the movie in your mind that's driving that feeling, right? So if that sounds like you, I want you to begin to think and listen closely. Now, still other clients sit in my office and they're like a ball on my couch. They don't have a lot to say. It's hard for them to find words to tell me what they're feeling. And so they don't necessarily have that. They know it. They can sense it. And their stress is showing up in their body. And in that way, we have to begin to connect. When your body is doing that thing, I think it means that you're feeling really uncertain, or you're feeling fear. Does that match? right? So I don't know, again, so one of my homework in this noticing is how does your stress show up for you so that you can begin to connect these three dots. If you are newly diagnosed, in this presentation I'm gonna kind of take us down the trajectory. I don't know where you all are out there, but if you're newly diagnosed, and if you think back to when you were newly diagnosed, these are some of the things that I think can sometimes help you get your feet on the ground. Educating on the individuality of your diagnosis and the treatment options for you. Cancer is big. It is many, 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 many different diagnoses, right? And you need to know your lane and your options and what is ahead of the path for you, which can get confusing when you sit in a support group and other people are doing different things, or other people have a different protocol that feels like startling sometimes. What do you mean my doctor's not doing that with me? Well, it might lead to asking questions to your medical team, but it might also bring you back home to your lane. Formulating those questions, right? Formulating questions and organizing yourself in that way is an important place of kind of figuring out how to have this conversation, form this relationship that you're gonna have with your doctors, because it's a relationship. So I've gotta ask these things and then I begin to expect how my doctor responds to me or where they guide me. Navigating the hospital system, it's big, right? There's a lot of different places to go. And if you're someone that feels a great deal of anxiety before you go in for a treatment or before you go in for a test or a scan, then it's going to be really helpful for you to know I take a left or right and go up this floor of the stairs, on the elevator. Right? We don't have to think about anything. We want to understand and know where to go. And we also, when I say navigating the healthcare system, or the hospital system, I also want you to begin to know all the different members in your medical team. It isn't just a nurse and a doctor. There's also a nutritionist. In many, many hospitals, there's alternative and complementary care, right? So there's a social worker, there's a billing department, there's many different people that are part of this team for you. So if you're newly diagnosed, how do you begin to know this system? And then all of that leads us back to information overwhelm. It's beginning to pay attention, noticing when it feels like a lot, and we need to slow down and pace things. I think I've done enough for today. I'm going to meet this again tomorrow. And that's a skill. So when you're newly diagnosed, it's beginning to kind of understand, how do I pace this and how do I get myself organized? Not only on paper, but in my mind. So when we think about beginning that newly diagnosed toolbox, establish a list of trusted resources for educating yourself. I was just having a conversation about 4 minutes ago with someone, and I said, you know, that would be a great question to ask later in the breakout sessions about what trusted resources you could turn to learn about clinical trials or to learn about emerging research. Where do you learn that? How do you go? How do you begin to figure those things out? So for you to know, hey, these are the websites and the resources that I really love and that I know are good information, and these places kind of, sometimes I don't get what I need, or I don't know if I can trust it. Get a binder, get a notebook, organize yourself in a way that it's all in one place, write down those questions, but don't just write them down. I have clients that I sit with and I work with, and they're like, Julie, I've written down all my questions, great, they show me, it's huge. I'm like, wow, it's a lot. Now we sometimes spend time, can you go through there and let's number them? Because if you start at the top, but your most important one is down here, we're gonna have a problem. And you know when you get in I don't know how you are, but I certainly know some of the clients I work with feel like they get into that office and they just kind of go on autopilot a little bit because their mind is a bit nervous and they wanna get it all in. So the work that you do in advance of that appointment to help your future self sitting there is helpful. So sometimes we go through and we either highlight in different colors or we number them so that you know what's the most important things that you want to talk about. Consider, and then also in the beginning, and again, you might be in different places, beginning to figure out, what do you want people to know? What is it, as I begin to disclose this diagnosis, what do I want them to know? Sometimes it's more than, I'm getting treatment for cancer, I'm going through cancer. Sometimes it's things like, I'm still working and that's really helpful and keeps me grounded. Because I think sometimes people, when they fear about diagnosis, when they fear about disclosure, they begin to think about what other people are going to start to assume or jump to conclusions. And so let's just hit that off at the head. Let's go right in there with what do you not want people to assume, or what do you not want people to jump to a conclusion, and let's use that as part of the data that when we disclose, right? So you know what? I'm actually coping really well. And I'm finding that it's really helpful for me to stay engaged with all of my kids' activities. And it's good for me when people ask me how I'm doing. Or, I feel lonely sometimes. I'm doing well by and large, but I feel lonely sometimes, and I would really love it if I had a good number of people that would come with me on a walk here and there. So in our disclosure, we can also say how we're doing and what's working and what's not working. I have found, I wonder if this makes sense, that when I listen to anxiety and worry, often underneath it or behind it is an unanswered question, right? So sometimes that gives us reason to look at it, to let it into the room and say, hey, I'm feeling worried. Okay, what's my worry? Well, my worry is because I don't know this, or I feel uncertain about this, or this feels like a big giant dark hole, a gap for me. So can you begin to get underneath your anxiety and figure out what your question is? And that leads us back to kind of your medical team. It also means oftentimes connecting with a support group or a peer-to-peer. I say to people all the time, your medical doctors, and they have a role, like people like me have a role where we're in oncology, we're in this lane, we know this terrain, we've seen many, many, many patients over the course of our career, so we can kind of provide a lot of light into that and education. Your friends and your family have a history with you. They know that when you get stressed, you do X, Y, and Z, right? So they know you well based on other hard moments in your life. But a peer, a fellow cancer survivor, is walking the walk, right? They are also awake at 2 in the morning, wondering about their neuropathy. Or they are also managing treatment and trying to figure out how to do that and still stay connected to their lives. They're also rumbling with uncertainty. So sometimes connecting with another peer, another cancer survivor, can provide a different level of support and information. Active treatment, now we move into active treatment. It's a changing landscape, right? You're in a different place from newly diagnosed. Now you're into treatment. And how do you track the changes and how you're feeling and what's going on for you, keeping kind of a notice of that. I don't know if that makes sense to those of you who have been through treatment, but I often tell people you'll likely notice a pattern. And when you notice a pattern to the way you're responding, it will help inform you about how you connect with the other parts of your lives and kind of swing back and forth between cancer world and the rest of your world. There's often a need for control, and at a time when things feel so out of your control, what is available to you? Sometimes our basics are within our control. You do have control over what time you go to bed at night. You do have control over, what you choose to put in your body, or what you hope, what you fill your refrigerator with, right? Those are places that you have control. You do have control over your breath. You have control over the way you connect with others. You have control over the energy that you put out into the world, right? Sometimes I talk to my clients about bookmarking their day, another idea. In the beginning of the day, as your feet hit the ground, as you wake up in the morning, can you set your intention? That's the way we're going to begin. Setting intention is not, I'd like to get these 3 tasks done today. Intention is, how am I showing up to this day? I'm going to show up to this day with curiosity. All right, that's going to be my thing. Today I'm just going to show up to this day curious about others, about myself, about how I'm walking into this day. Maybe I'm going to show up to this day with kindness to myself, and I'm going to keep leaning back on that intention. I'm going to show up to this day with grace. I'm going to lower my expectations if I need to. I'm going to forgive that this is happening in the traffic. I'm going to show up to my day with this, right? So how you set your intention for the day. You get to choose what you want. And then at the other end of your day, how do you bookmark the end of your day with just perhaps And at the risk of sounding cheesy, but I think it's quite powerful and profound, a moment of gratitude. What worked? And that's sometimes an important thing to remember to think about. What's not working in the room is often so doggone loud, right? And so if we can put a bit of our attention on what worked, and maybe it was like, you know what worked? Is that these slippers I have are so good. And I'm so glad I've got them. And I'm gonna wear them all day tomorrow. Or you know what worked? Is that I went and got my mail, and I had this really awesome, like kind of fleeting conversation with the mail person. And that was really awesome. That worked for me today. You know what worked? Is that there was no red lights when I made it to that terrible medical appointment that I went to, but at least there were no red lights. Figuring out what worked. You know what worked? Is that I sat at dinner tonight with my family. And even though today I got hard news or treatment made me feel really crappy, I did sit and we watched a movie later. Turn on the lights for what's working. Understanding and accessing supportive care resources and setting boundaries. So these are all we're going to talk about setting boundaries in a second. These are all parts of the things that begin to be tasks as you start treatment, right? Creating your all-star support team. So isolation is a risk factor for anxiety and depression. It is. So, and unfortunately, when we feel anxious, or when we are struggling with depression or sadness or fear, our instinct, and it's biologically programmed, our instinct is to constrict. It's to get small. And that's protective, right? So when we don't feel up for it, we want to crawl back in bed. When we're feeling kind of low and flat, we don't really want to talk to anybody. And that's understandable. So you're thinking we want to kind of give ourselves some grace and allow ourselves permission to feel that way. I think of feelings as a circle. So if you're feeling that way, you have to give yourself time to accept that hard feeling, that unsettled, that difficult space. Notice it, learn from it. But then we don't want to set up camp there and live there forever, right? So then it's, where do I have control? What's the next thing I can do? How may I be helpful, not hurtful, right? So I don't at all want to engage in this kind of culture of toxic positivity where, chin up, buttercup, or like, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, or it's gonna be fine, you're okay, you're gonna be okay, you know, everything will be fine. No, there are days when it is not fine, and it is okay. And you need to make space and time for that. And give yourself grace for that feeling and that emotion. But then we also got to figure out the way to soothe you and bring you back, right? The other half of that circle. When we don't, and when I think about unmet needs, this bullet point, unmet needs lead to irritation, resentment, frustration, loneliness, and fear, right? Most difficult feelings that we have that don't feel comfortable to have generally are driven by an unmet need, right? So, you know, I'm feeling really frustrated, I'm feeling really annoyed because I need more help around the house, and I'm exhausted, and the fact that everybody else is just moving along in their life like normal, and I am tired, and I'm needing partnership, I'm needing consideration, I'm needing respect. And then when you do the dishes and put them in the dishwasher to help me out, or when you call and check in with me, that meets that need and I feel better. So listen closely. When you feel upset, what's the unmet need underneath that? And then what are some possible strategies or behaviors that you can ask for in others or yourself that would help to meet that need? Does that make sense? That's like intense. You're gonna have to sit on that and chew on that for a little bit and listen and watch yourself. But are there specific roles or tasks that you can ask of others, right? Like being a messenger to help disseminate information because that's overwhelming and I know people love me, but I can't do it again and again and again. and this person really wants a way to help me, that would be super helpful. At work, I don't want to have to tell everybody, but if you don't mind telling them these bullet points, that just helps me out. Help with your kids. Researcher, it's overwhelming to me, and I find I get in dark, spinning rabbit holes to go on the web, on the internet. So if you could help me to kind of find some information and to bullet some things out for my doctor, that would be super helpful, and I trust you. What are other ways of talking, a treatment partner, somebody that goes with you to treatment? I have a client, and she frankly enjoys going to treatment because she goes with her very best friend who cracks her up, and she can't wait for that moment. They just sit there and they joke around, and they have a great relationship with the nurse, and she's like, Julie, is it crazy that I kind of look forward to it? And I'm like, I think you found a way that it's working for you. So finding ways that work for you, walking buddies, other things. Add to the chat. See, I've been doing so much of this via Zoom. Add to the chat. Try not to ignore or minimize your distress. Your honest feelings are way more helpful to other people. Facing off with worry. Okay, so I think that a lot of worry shows up as a what if, right? What if, what if, what if? Got a couple different options for you on these what ifs, okay? So I'm gonna give you a couple different ways to respond. Does your worry show up as a what if? What if it comes back? What if this happens to my work? What if this happens in my family? What if my kids are affected? What if, I don't know, but what ifs are often big worries. First is change your what if to what is. Take inventory of your present and what you know for sure. So a lot of times if you've had a scan and you're like, what if it comes back? What if this pain is cancer? What if this fatigue that I'm feeling is a change? Let's go back to the present, and let's go back to the concrete facts that you know from your last doctor's visit, the last scan that you had, the last blood work that you had, what you're actually feeling. You know what? I'm actually, if I stand back, I'm actually feeling quite a lot of energy in other places, though I do have this kind of pressure I'm feeling in my chest. I have a client right now that is feeling some pressure, some ache, pain in her chest. That's where her tumor was. And she's worried about it. Last scan, everything's looking good. And they told her it was just healing. It's where things are healing. Her body is healing. Your body's been through a lot. And so whenever that nags at her, she comes right back to, my hair's growing. I feel a whole different level of energy than I did 2 months ago. I'm feeling all these other signs that my body is working, and that's helping to ground her, right? What if to what else? Are there other possible truths? So I have this, I was also working really hard yesterday in my garden, so I could feel really tired because of that. Or, you know what, it's a change of season, and historically, always when I have a change of season, my nose gets runny and I get a cough and I have that. So it could be these other things. So change what if to what else might it be? Are there other possible truths here? What if to then what? What then? So sometimes I had one guy that I worked with, and he said, so Julie, listen, I am doing this what if to what is, and I'm doing the what else thing. It's not working for me. That worry wheel is just spinning. It's nagging at me. And I said, well, you're sitting in front of me. How did you get here? What did you do with that? He's like, well, I just went to the worst case scenario. I was like, okay, well, how did you find there? And he said, I just kind of began to figure out that there was always something we could do. So sometimes, I don't know who you are or will be helpful to you, but I have found clients in my office that find it helpful to just go to, well then what? If this happens, then what? I often have this conversation with clients that I meet 24 hours before their scan, and that fear of recurrence is hot at that time. And I said, okay, well what if they do find it, then what? Well, then you're going to talk to your doctor about your next step. Well, then you're going to begin to learn what the next options are. In other words, we don't just fall off a cliff. We keep having a conversation, and we learn the next plan and the next plan. And then you get to meet with all these other people. And then we bring everybody back in to support you in a different level of support. Okay, I can do that, been here. I don't want to do that. I know you don't want to do that. Then we're going to come right back down to here. Remember that we're talking about a what if. So, right? Sometimes it can feel settling and calming to actually make a concrete plan for your worst case scenario and then find your own way on back to today. So that might be an option. What if to what's left? Okay, that's all living there. I cannot get rid of that spin. It's gonna live there. It might be unrealistic to think it's gonna completely go away. So I'm just gonna have to say, you're living there in the background, what else? Okay, well today I've gotta make dinner, people need food, and I have to go run this errand because I ran out of toilet paper, so I gotta do that. And I've gotta meet with this person later, and we're gonna talk about our plans for this. So what's left? I've got this whole other life outside of cancer. Where else can I turn my attention and focus on? That's not gonna go away. I'm just gonna accept that that rumble's gonna sit there. It's gonna be there, but I'm going to say, I know you're there, but I've got this other stuff that I've gotta do, right? Those are strategies with that anxiety. Name it to claim it. I just said, fear and your worry may not completely go away, right? I think that's realistic and it's honest. It may live in there. And I think part of what post-treatment survivorship looks like is learning how that feels. That there's this new presence of a worry that's sitting with you or walking with you. And you just learn that it's there and how to focus on other things. But back to my very first piece of homework in that slide, noticing. And if you can begin to name your feelings, it will give you a little bit of distance from the feeling so that you can respond. There's a very cool, can I tell you like a little bit of like neuroscience? That your stress is mitigated by your limbic system, which is way back here. Okay, this is the oldest part of your brain. It's what keeps us, it's what helps us survive, fight, flight, freeze, right? And that's when we feel stressed or when we feel triggered, we go into that space. And we don't think, we act quickly. We're reactive, not responsive, we're reactive. When you notice it, remember how I told you to notice it? And remember I told you to notice it in different places and how we kind of see it and name it? When you name it, actually with the word, I am feeling overwhelmed, I am feeling fear. Not I am scared or I am overwhelmed. I am feeling overwhelmed, I am feeling fear. Your language center of your brain is up here. It's in your prefrontal cortex. So what you've just done, super cool, my nerdy self is kind of excited by this, is you've just drawn a line from this part of your brain up to this part of your brain with that language and that word, and guess what else, and just lit that up. Guess what else lives up here? Impulse control, judgment, decision making, right? So remember when I said, when you feel calmer, you act smarter, because you've just engaged the parts of your brain that can respond, not react. So you're not letting the feeling drive the bus. You're back in control. So I am feeling fear. And when you say I am feeling fear, and you engage and you name it and you say it out loud, you've just created a little space between the feeling and yourself, and then you can make a choice for what are you going to do with that fear? How may I be helpful, not hurtful, right? So get in that habit of naming that feeling. And as you do that, and I think over survivorship, you begin to build the tolerance for uncomfortable feelings. That's what I call this going to the mental gym. That every single time you notice it, and you say, where do I have control? What would be helpful to me? That's like the bicep curl of recognizing this feeling lives in me, and I've got to kind of bring it back to the right now. I've got to come right back to this present moment. We can get so lost in our anxious worry about the future, fortune telling, kind of writing like the concerns and the worries of what's going to happen down the road. Our worry lives in the future, wouldn't you say? I think our worry is often in the future. Or we can get kind of wrapped up in rehashing and reiterating and going over the what ifs and I should have and I could have and the guilt and the regrets of our past. And all that is crowding out your present. And your present is where you are. It's where you're living. It's where you're engaging with the people that you love. It's where you're doing the things that give you purpose and meaning. Tell you what, cancer has taken too much from you. Don't let it take your present, right? Come right on back to this moment. And when you notice and when you name it, you get the chance to make a choice about how do I get right back to now? Be really realistic about the expectations of the day ahead, right? So when you wake up in the morning and you're doing that thing I said about maybe setting your intentions, you're also noticing yourself then too. I don't know how you are, but there are mornings that I wake up and I'm like, I am not firing on all 8 cylinders today. I'm tired, and I didn't sleep well last night, and I'm not at my best. So I can't face my day like the day before when I was. And maybe some of that is communicating. If you live in my house, I can say, see guys, I'm tired today. I don't have the same level of patience. I need you to get in the car right now. I am gonna lose it. So I am not at my best. And that is me noticing and trying to meet the day ahead with realistic expectations. I'm not 100% today. That's okay. You won't have days where you're 100%, but then treat that day relatedly, appropriately. Bookmark your distress and observe the changes over time. So a lot of the time, people sit in my office on really particularly dark and heavy times. And they're worried that that will be the case always. I will never feel. I think I had a client just this past week who said, I think what I'm grieving, what an insightful thing he said, I think what I'm grieving is that I don't know, Julie, if I will ever feel like myself again. I think that what I'm noticing is that it's never going to be the way that I loved or the parts of me that I really loved. And that's a heavy feeling, right? That's hard to reconcile, that's identity. And I said, okay, well that feeling feels really heavy today. Let's mark it on the calendar. Let's say you're struggling with this sense of grief, this experience of grief, and this change in who you are, and it's kind of at a level 10 today. It's making you feel just really heavy and hard. And then let's check in a week. And then let's check in a month. I'm not saying it's gonna go away, but I am wondering if it changes. And there are days when even though you have changed and cancer changes you, I think some of the work is figuring out how it's changed you, what hasn't changed. But I think that when you begin to notice the ups and the downs of that, it's easier to trust and to lower your expectation and find your way through the harder moments because you've learned it does change. It shifts. I feel different. I have a wonderful group I do every month with women with ovarian cancer, and many of them are late stage. And their treatment may not be changing, their prognosis may not be changing, but even so, their emotion and how they're coping does change. Smooth communication, I'm gonna kind of fly through this slide if you don't mind, but communication is a stress point for a lot of people within relationships. So my main takeaways about communication are that it can be helpful to you to know who the best audience is for what you need to say. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. And that sometimes in certain environments, it can be helpful to have rehearsed or simple responses that you can just pop out so that you don't have to go into things with people that you don't want to go into things with, or that you can advocate and speak up for yourself, assert yourself in times when no one's paying attention, right? So have those things ready. If you're not in a place, if you're over here on this day when you're not feeling quite up for it and people are greeting you, you have to also have not only scripts, but conversation changers at the ready. Have you experienced that? Where somebody's coming at you with, how are you? And how's it going? And I'm not there, I don't want to do this. You not only have to have what you say, fine, thanks for asking, but also you gotta change the course. So tell me, I thought you guys were going on a vacation, how was it? In other words, like, I don't want to go here, and we're gonna move, we're gonna take a left turn. So not only have the scripts ready for cancer, but also what are some easy things you've got in your back pocket to turn the corner and change the conversation if that's not what you want to talk about. Here's this slide that I've been talking about. I've been doing this slide, if you people have watched me do this, I've done this for years and years and years, and it's the one doggone thing everybody always comes back to me about. So I wish I should have just written a book about this about 20 years ago, and then I'd be a millionaire. But this is, I want everybody to sit in the room and think about all of the people in your life. All of them. Your family, your close friends, your neighbors, your maybe community of faith, your colleagues, just everybody, right? Who you've got. We're going to categorize those people. And the way I remember this is FDR, as in the president, and you can see there's a highway, but FDR. And your F people are your feeling friends, your feeling people. These individuals know exactly how to respond. They do it right. They hear you, they're able to sit with you in the bottom of the well. They get you. They don't say anything at all in just the right way. They also are probably the folks that can celebrate you and feel proud without feeling competitive or jealous. If you have 2, maybe 3 of those people, that's normal. People usually have 1 to 3 of those people. It's not a big group. It's small. It's intimate. Those are your feeling friends. Those are the people that you unload to because they can take it. And is it a problem? People ask me if it's not my spouse. No. It might be your sister. It might be your wife. It might be your husband. It might be your mother. It might be your very, very good friend who gets it. I don't know who it is, but do you know who that person is? Next crowd is the D. This is the largest group. And the D friends are your doers. They care deeply for you. You matter to them. They matter to you. They will do things for you. They will show up. They will be there. But they are not always consistent or predictable with how they respond to the big stuff. Like it scares them. You end up having to take care of them. They get upset. They go blank. They change the subject because it's uncomfortable. It just gets quiet in the room. Whatever it is, you just leave that feeling like, I don't think what I wanted to get out of that. But yet they're close. So those are your doers. And these people, you can ask them for things, right? You can say, because they want to support you. You know what I need is I need to go on a walk. I would love to do something that's not cancer. Can we do something else? Or can you come over and help me with this? Or can we find a time to talk? And these friends want to do something, but they may not be the best audience for you for the heavy stuff. It's good to know, so you don't get disappointed and hurt. And then the third group is respite. And that group feels probably the most disappointing. They've hurt you, they've not been there. But if you're like any of the other clients that I've met with, there are times when you might feel sick and tired of your cancer. I don't want to face it. I don't want to talk about it today. I don't want to do this. Well, then you go to our friend, because they're going to ask you a doggone thing about you. They're not going to say, how are you? They're not going to focus on you. They're going to talk about themselves the whole time. They're going to be all that, and that's great, because sometimes we want to parachute out of this, right, and not think about it. So if you're feeling like you need an escape, you meet up with an R friend, and you will not talk about cancer all day. Knowing your FDR is important because it protects you. At the end of the day, you want to feel that when you go to others for your needs, they've been met. I'm going to scooch over to this slide right here and end with this. Living through cancer requires this effort of mental and emotional flexibility, tuning in, taking care of you. This is just as important as figuring out your nutrition and your treatment plan with your doctors, paying close attention to the day in the day out. And sometimes it helps to zoom way in on the next task, the next thing that I'm going to do, because otherwise it all looks overwhelming. And other times it can help to zoom way out and remember your values. You know what? You know how I want to live this life, whatever I'm doing, I want to be a person that shows up in these ways. I want this to be how people think of me. I want these values to be my North Star. So that's when you zoom way out. So sometimes we gotta zoom way in, sometimes we gotta zoom way out. Sometimes we need to lean into our cancer world and connect with peers and support groups and conferences like today because it deserves our time and our attention. And sometimes we just wanna go have pizza and beer with a friend, right? You have to learn how to navigate that balance and and what you're needing and what's working for you. You are more than your cancer diagnosis, right? Yeah. So balance the parts of yourself outside of this. Remember to turn on the lights in the rest of the room too. Okay, I've given you a lot of homework. Good luck. Embrace the day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Now, a few housekeeping notes before we move forward with the day. Our morning breakout sessions will begin promptly at 11:15 a.m. Please note that the morning sessions and locations are listed here on the screen. Our staff and volunteers are at the registration table and are ready to help should you have any additional questions. When your morning breakout session ends, please first go to the foyer right outside these conference doors to pick up your meals and then proceed back to this room. We will be eating lunch here and invite you to sit at the tables organized by disease. LLS is very excited to provide an opportunity to our survivors attending today to enter a drawing to win a Ninja Shark blender. These blenders were generously provided to LLS from Ninja. Patients who visit the LLS Education and Service booth or the LLS Myeloma Link exhibitor table will receive a raffle ticket. 6 lucky winners will be selected at lunch. Individuals must be present to win. If you have any questions following our session today, please visit our LLS Education and Services exhibitor booth located in our exhibitor hall. We have one of our LLS information specialists managing our booth, and they are more than happy to help answer any questions, provide information on resources and other LLS programs available from our national office. Lastly, I also want to draw your attention to the conference evaluation form. Please be sure and fill this out throughout the day and drop it off before you leave at the end of the conference. Your comments are critically important in helping us make sure our conference meets your needs. See you back here at 12:30 and enjoy your session.